Welcome to this session. My name is Jorge Vasconcelos, Chairman of the Portuguese Association of Electric Vehicles. We have some changes in the program, and me being chairing this session is one of the changes, but it's my pleasure to do that. We also changed slightly the order of the speakers in this first part of the Portuguese session of your international conference. I hope that this does not disturb you too much. And I would like to invite my colleague in the board, from the board of the Portuguese Association of Electric Vehicles and distinguished chairman of the conference, to address us. Paulo, thank you very much for inviting APVE to organize or co-organize this session. It's our pleasure to be here with you and with all of you, and to share with you the Portuguese experience with electric mobility.
Thank you. Thank you, George. I will make a short presentations, especially for those who are not attending the conference, the VPPC conference, in order to them to have an idea what this conference is. I also apologize because I have a meeting already started, so I will have to leave within a few minutes, but you will be all in very good hands, and I hope I can return later for this session. So the IEEE Vehicle Power and Propulsion Conference 2014 is the 11th edition. As you can see, it's the 4th edition on Europe. The first one was 10 years ago in Paris, France, then in Chicago, Windsor, UK, Arlington, USA, VPPC 2008 in Harbin, China, then 2009 Dearborn, USA, and 2010 Lille, France, and we benefit a lot from the experiences of the colleagues from Lille. Indeed, the general chair of the Lille conference, Professor Alain Buscairol, is co-chair of this VPPC 2014 and has been a very valuable help for organizing the conference where we are now. And 3 years ago it was in Chicago, 2 years ago in Seoul, last year in China. Now you are here, so you know where you are. And next year it will be in Montreal, Canada. So you can see it's a worldwide conference that travels at least in these 3 continents for the moment, and it's the 4th time in Europe, and it's a pleasure to welcome you all to this session of the Portuguese Electric Vehicle Association within or in parallel with this conference that is being occurring here. So if you are here in this room, it means you are here. There is outside an EV and hybrid electric vehicle exposition and test drive. So during the coffee break or after the session, maybe you can try to make some test drives. We had around 220 participants from 28 countries. There were submitted 33 papers from 33 countries, 215 submitted, and were accepted 163. We have 6 technical regular tracks, 7 special sessions, 1 invited session in fuel cells. So these tracks all gave origin to 17 oral sessions with each one with 5 or 6 presentations, plus 3 dialogue sessions or posters with 20, 22 posters in each one. So you have here the regular tracks. You can see advanced vehicles, energy storage components and systems, modeling, analysis, dynamics and control, vehicular electric power systems and loads, vehicular electronics, vehicular power electronics and motor drives. These are the regular tracks. It means the usual topics of this international conference, but there are also some invited about fuel cell health management and prognostic, and other special sessions, one about multi-phase drives, energetic macroscopic representation, advanced battery technologies for traction application, global optimization of the design of hybrid electric powertrains, control strategies for fuel cell vehicles, intelligent vehicle technologies, and intelligent transportation systems, and smart grids and EVs. So you can see, even though the core of the conference is focused on vehicle power and propulsion conference, there are also, through these topics, other topics related with the connection with the vehicle, with the grid, with society and so on, and simulation. Well, you have here the program. So, sorry. We are in this session. So at this time there is a dialogue session occurring, and the next session that will be held in Portuguese will have also 3 of those oral sessions in parallel. And the conference already starts on Monday with tutorial, and will end tomorrow. So, this is where we are now. As I told you, there is this parallel meeting of a European project that had also a public part for the conference attendance yesterday. The tutorials were about life cycle assessment of electric vehicles, optimal control of hybrid powertrain with 0.3 engine minimum principle, and enhanced power converter reliability by integrated design. And we also have 3 plenary sessions with 4 keynote speeches. Yesterday it was about, by Professor C.C. Shen about Renaissance and global electric vehicle development. Today it was about the European Commission strategy for green car and EV charging infrastructure, an overview from the European Commission and from EFACEC. And tomorrow's morning we will have BMW's vision for electric mobility. So we had yesterday a very nice reception, I hope, at the City Hall, at least for me it was. Today we'll have a gala dinner in the conference, and to finish the conference, we will have a cultural tour. So this is the program for the VPPC conference attendance. Just for those that are not participating on the conference, but only on this Portuguese Electric Vehicle Association, to have an overview of the conference that we are holding here, which is one of the most important conferences in electrical vehicles in the world. Okay, so we had some partnerships, either the sponsors, institutional sponsors, technical sponsorship, and industrial sponsors, and I wish also to thank all of them. And if you wish, and I invite you all, either the VPPC conference attendance and also the attendance, the Portuguese attendance of these sessions, to look for or to the conference website, where you can find the program. Later we will find the recordings of the plenary sessions, recording of this session, if nobody opposes, okay, and of the next session, okay? So welcome to this APVE session. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Pedro. Thank you very much for your presentation. Now, I would like to invite Silva to come up and present the presentation.
Well, thank you very much, Paul, for sharing with us some of your time in these very long and busy days for you. And thank you again for offering us this possibility of having this kind of a window on the Portuguese experience with electric mobility. Just a few words about the association which has been mentioned, the Portuguese Association of Electric Vehicles. The association was created in the year 1999, and it has been very active in explaining to the public opinion and to decision makers what electric mobility is and can be and can mean for the cities, for the country, in connection with other similar national associations and with some international associations. Indeed, some large conferences took place in Portugal on electric mobility earlier in this century. And over the last, say, 4 years or so, electric mobility has become also an industrial and a research reality in Portugal. And it's basically to tell you about some of these experiences that we have designed this session. Unfortunately, one of the speakers, the last speaker on the program, Mr. Águas, who is the director of the Lisbon Energy Agency, was not able to come to tell us about Lisbon's programs and experience with electric mobility and sustainable mobility. Lisbon, as you know, is the capital city of Portugal, the largest city in Portugal, and also one of the cities with a higher penetration of charging points and electric vehicles in Portugal. So unfortunately, Miguel was not able to come to Coimbra and to join us today. And we were discussing just before this session what to do, since we don't have anybody to tell us about the experience from Lisbon. We thought that we have with us someone who is knowledgeable about smart cities, not only in Portugal, but all over the world. So we invited Robert Stussi to talk to you and to us about smart cities in general, not only Lisbon. So instead of having just Lisbon, you get the whole world, isn't it? Thank you very much, Robert, for accepting also replacing Miguel on short notice. I'm sure that we all will enjoy Robert's presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. You know, yesterday morning we had a presentation from our friend from China, CC Chan, and he was talking a lot about the context of electric mobility. But he's so excited by electric mobility that he always goes back to batteries and to tensions and all these things, which I don't understand at all. So I will try to show a little bit the context of electric mobility. Maybe it should be Reis who should be talking about that, because he is a big specialist in smart mobility, but since he had already another subject, I will try to talk about that. When we talk, doesn't work. Well, so when we talk about smart cities, of course, we talk of mobility, of ITS, ICT. In the last 20 years, we talked of sustainable mobility. But first of all, everybody got tired of talking about sustainable and to define what is sustainable. And now somebody invented the smart cities, which is much more sexy, much more interesting. But the question is also, what is smart? I mean, 30 years ago, everybody knows somebody invented this cube. And the people thought the smartest guy is the quickest who can put the colors right on the cube. But nowadays, sometimes the city say, I have 2 million sensors, so I'm the smartest city. So some people think the smart city is the technology city. Now it goes the other way around, or? Well, yeah. Oh, this one is forwards, okay. So, this is smart. You know, some people spend 200 euros that the cat, when the cat wants to play with the fish, he has a tablet just for the cat. But some other people invest 200 euros for this tablet software, which is for autist people who cannot communicate. So behind each of these symbols, the autist person has a program which explains his mood or what he wants to us. So it's a very intelligent way of communicating with us. Another smart thing is that India has now the low-cost rocket, you know, which they send up to, I don't know, the moon or something. And others spend 200 million euros, like yesterday night, when the most experienced country in the world sent up a rocket, and the rocket once more blew up. So I want to talk about two issues of mobility, model split and peak hours. These are medium-sized European cities, and usually about half of the mobility, which is the blue and the yellow part, is walking or using the bicycle. And the other part is the car and the public transport. Public transport, finally, is not so important in the overall play. Now, if the big city gets bigger, this is not anymore true. That means bicycling and walking gets very shrunk, very small, and the car usually gets much more important. So one solution to change that would be teleworking. Not necessarily working at home, but to work at the intermediate workstation, because working at home, you don't walk anymore, you don't use the bicycle, you get the belly like me. It's not the whole week, you work 1 or 2 days, but this would help a lot. And the workstation, the intermediate workstation, should be at a distance where you can again go to work by bicycle or walking. The other question is, when we change home or we change the job, we shouldn't change the workplace or the living place. So telework would also helping us to more freely choose either our workplace or our home. In Europe, we talk about teleworking maybe at university, but afterwards everybody forgets about it. Not so in the USA or in the big companies. Many global companies now have more or less 1/3 of teleworking, which means more or less 1/3 of lower cost, because they understood that teleworking is a question of low cost. But we are interested that telework resolves our urban congestion problem. And there are some examples. In Belgium, you can book your intermediate workstation. But for instance, in Colombia, they have already a website, a web tool, and a white book for teleworking. So like the bus rapid transit, which was introduced to Europe by the underdeveloped Latin America, also telework, it seems they are explaining us because they got a world award for their telework things. You know, we improved a lot. We have the bus rapid transit, so the mode split got better. As you can see here, the situation before and after the bus corridors. But the question is, the buses are all running on diesel. So it's a question, as ABB once said in every airport, they say, can we reduce by 30% energy in the cities? But the question is, we have also to reduce the CO2. And that's why, for instance, the bus rapid transport in Ecuador, in Quito, is paid with trolley buses and not with diesel buses. Or in some other cities, they use hybrid buses, especially in London, as you know. Or, like in Medellin, and now in Bogota and in Brazil, they start to introduce other transport, which inclusive solves problems where never any metro or any bus came to the squatter areas. And this changed also the whole sociological profile of these neighborhoods. Or then we can go to Holland, of course, where, as you see, the bicycle is so important that this is not the main railway station, that is at the main railway station, the bicycle terminal. It looks like a big railway station, but it's a bicycle terminal. The second question is the peak hour. On the left side, we have the cars. And as you know, whenever you have a street, there are cars. They are there day and night, so there is no peak hour. They are more or less running all the day. In public transport, it's the opposite. We have always 2 peak hours or 3. And this peak is very expensive because we have to supply the vehicles, the extra personnel to respond to this extreme peak. So if we could reduce by telework these peak hours, we could save a lot of money. Some people say, okay, let's shift the working hours. That means flexible working hours. And we talked about it, but nobody does it because the school still starts at the same time as the work because mama brings the pupil to the school, and flexible working hour didn't work. They tried, for instance, in Rotterdam, where you have to pay an extra charge if you drive on the peak hour. Or we have now Uber, as you know, Uber charges as the traffic increases. In the peak hour, they charge you more expensive. So everybody is against, everybody knows what is Uber? Uber is a company who runs taxi, but not with a taximeter, but by the distance, with GPS, you pay by the distance, and the price you pay if there is more or less congestion. And of course, the traditional taxis are all against it, but they could do the same thing, and it would help a lot. The other question is that we use intelligent transport systems to have seamless traveling, because in all surveys, when we try to find out why people don't use public transport, it's usually because if you change modes, that is an impedance and people don't like it. An example is Brussels, the capital of Europe. If you look there at the metro plan, you are very sure that you get out on the wrong place because it's so complicated in our sophisticated capital that you don't get out. In Holland, the ticketing machines of the trains are so complex that on the website they have a tutor that you can try out how you pay when you arrive at the ticket automat, which is a very bad sign that you have to study at home how to use the ticket apparatus. Google, of course, was quicker. Nowadays, many cities, they have trip planners, but Google usually does it better and does it for pedestrians, for bicycles, and so on. This is, for instance, in Bogota, a very big city of 15 million, and Google has the bicycle trip planner on board. That means really we should use the intelligent transport systems, the ICT, to improve the public transport ridership. And interesting enough is that we always say that new technologies are difficult to introduce in other societies, and that's not true. You can be in Africa, I sometimes teach in Cameroon, and you don't have a public transport system, only shared taxis or shared motos, but in every corner you have internet and you have mobile phones. That means these new technologies are also very easy to apply. And as you know, there is no place in China where you cannot have reception on a mobile phone. Another question is that we have to apply the solutions not only for passengers, but for logistics, because urban logistics is a very important problem in any country. And we really should try to use intelligent systems and clean transport systems like here in Utrecht, where they have intermediary depot where you put the merchandise, and then the city hopper electric train distributes the goods, or they also distribute the beer in Utrecht and Amsterdam by electric boats. The other question is, when we think about smart cities, a lot of people think it's impossible to retrofit a city. Indeed, it's not very easy. We use a lot of land. We use a lot of land for stupid things like parking. So some people think the vertical city is the solution. That's 300 meters, the 400 meters towers. But we know also that they are very energy intensive. They use a lot of energy. Others think we should have new cities. That's Masdar City, everybody hears about it. And they worked for 4 years now with the best companies and best intelligence, and they want to make a new city. But in the moment, only this little part is existing. And then they say they would put underground a personal rapid transit system, and they have 4 or 5 of these experimental personal rapid cars, electric of course. And now they said, it's too expensive, and they abandon it, so they have to put again the cars on the top. So to build new cities, it's nice to experiment, but it's kind of a dream. So the thing is that a lot of planners, city planners and transport planners think still in traditional terms. And we really have to start to think about new solutions. And the smart city is not necessarily so complex as this graph. The question is also, you know, if you design a city, it's all very intelligent, underground, overground, all these things, but it's very difficult to transform existing cities to these criteria. There are some simple systems. There is a very intelligent guy, he is the director of the Barcelona Ecological Center, and he says, we just, instead of having the traffic going through all the streets, we make super blocks, and then the traffic goes around here, and inside we have only local traffic, residents, and so on. So there are ways to transform a city in a cleaner city, in a city which can work smarter. We should also think that we use these fantastic technologies not only for the mainstream, but to make transport inclusive and safe. One thing is very easy, you know, Helsinki, that was speed over 50 in 73. In 2004, you only see very, very little parts. So even the main streets in Helsinki are 30 kilometers or 50. Other people, they make a street lab. And what is a street lab? The English, they found out that more people die. Listen to that, not in car accidents, more people die falling down the stairs. So what they do, they make a street lab where they shake the pedestrians, find out how they fall, what's happening, and then they try to change it. They do it also in the street. So they try to use the intelligent technologies to make the city safer. The other question is, there is no place where you find more wheelchairs than in motor shows, because of course the dream of Liberty, the car, is the guy who is in the wheelchair. But you can really do it. This is in Sweden. There is a paraplegic lady, the baby, and this gentleman. And I traveled with them from Malmö to Copenhagen airport, and they did it alone. They didn't need any assistance. That means the system is intelligent and helps them. This is in Canada, where you don't need anymore the dog to guide a blind person, but he has it all in his smartphone. I hope the smartphone also knows when the electricity on the traffic light is out of work, so he doesn't get killed. So we have to use the intelligent solutions also to achieve inclusivity. We have to listen to these guys. Usually, you know, we are up here, the experts, and these guys are down there, but sometimes we have to turn around and listen to them to find out the solution. And the smart city is really has also a lot to do with put your city on the map. Who knows? Well, it's written there. One city in Portugal invented electric bike sharing, and everybody knows it, although in Brussels in a conference they said, in the north of Spain there is a city, Agueda, who has the first electric bike sharing. I said, sorry, it's in the north of Portugal. But then they were very intelligent. They made, during September, the festival of umbrellas. And I was in Colombia, and CNN and the local newspaper reported that. So you see, it's a smart way how to put your city on the map. And there are very different places. I mentioned a few examples because it's important that cities decide. I mean, everybody knows who had really the courage to make road pricing was the mayor of London, but he was not the first guy. There was Singapore, there were other cities, but he did it in a big scale and it had impact. So we really have to work on the mindset to use intelligently the space. You know, the kids between the freeway and the fence, they find their space to make their games. And this was in another conference, and the girl, she got suddenly fed up by the experts, so she started to draw. And of course she has a roundabout, because everybody has roundabouts. But then try to find a car on this design. There are animals, gates, buses, everything but cars. So we should listen to them, because when we were young, the dream for everybody was the car, of course. And now we should say that. We should not do that. We should learn to do better. Well, Italy, which is the country who is most advanced in electric mobility, you still cannot imagine here an electric bus. It has, of course, to be a Ferrari. But maybe we think about it that in the future we can again walk around reading a book and praising this lady is also reading his book, and that we don't have to walk through this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert, for this. It was not a tour de table, it was a tour du monde. And for the very nice examples you gave us. And now we move to research and development in Portugal. And Professor Peças Lopes, who is the leader of the INESC group in Portugal, dealing with energy and mobility issues, is indeed the best placed person in our country to tell you about what Portugal has done and is doing in terms of research and development. So, João Bel, please.
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. First of all, thank you very much to the organization and to the Portuguese Electric Association for the electric vehicle, and to George for this kind invitation for me to talk to you about what has been done regarding research and development in Portugal during the last years. Well, as you saw, the topic of electric mobility is vast. It tackles lots of subjects, starting from the drivetrain up to the management of the integration of the vehicle in the electrical grid, the use of ICT technologies to deal with the payments, and trying also to understand the willingness or the needs of the electrical drivers. To have ICT systems to help manage all this complex new world. And of course, Portugal has not been away from this trend, and we followed quite closely what has been done all over the world, and I may even say that at some point we were very much involved in developing R&D that was on the top of the wave regarding some of the topics that have been mentioned before. And of course, if we look at research that has been developed in Portugal in the last years, I mean, the polytechnic institutes, the universities, the R&D centers, all of them, they were somehow involved in dealing with the subject. But not only. For instance, there is SEIA that has also been that has also developed a lot of work on that topic. What I may tell you is a little bit about the experience that my institution has done in the last years. And I may tell you that, for instance, we invested about, we were involved in R&D programs that involved more than 3 million euros. And this is a lot of money for a small country and for small R&D institutions, as you may guess, that we have here. And we invested a lot of money and work on this specific topic. And of course, we looked more at the problem of the electric vehicle as a new agent, a new player in the electric power system. This was our topic, our concern, and we developed several PhDs. We developed a lot of research and development, but always with an idea in mind. That is that our R&D could be used afterwards by the industry, because we are concerned about the social value, the economic value of the research that we develop. So at the same time, we in Portugal, as you may know, we are the 7th country in Europe with the largest penetration of renewable energies. I think so. I think we are
still the second highest wind.
The second highest, but regarding renewable as a whole, I think we are on the 7th. Including large radio, exactly. So we were very much concerned in developing all the concepts related with electric mobility, taking into account the fact that we want electric vehicles to be the proportion of these electric vehicles to be made using renewable energies. So we don't want to have electric vehicles powered by thermal power stations, for instance. Although, if we do well-to-wheel cycle analysis, we may even arrive to the conclusion that somehow it may even be interesting to have some thermal power plants burning fossil fuels, and afterwards the total efficiency may even be better than if you use old conventional internal combustion engine cars. But anyhow, this was not the idea. What we were looking for was indeed to try to make that electric vehicles could and should use the renewable energies, and in this case, renewable electricity. And so we developed a lot of work on this topic. And of course, this is not a topic that was only developed in Portugal. As I told you, if you look back a few years ago, you will see that this has been a very hot topic since in the last, say, 5-6 years. And many institutions, many people have devoted their time to this topic. What I may tell you is that the approach we developed was such that we started by looking at what was the expected behavior of the potential drivers of electric vehicles. And so trying to understand the way how they would behave, for instance, how they would like to charge their cars. Would they prefer to charge their cars at home, or they would prefer to charge their cars elsewhere? And for instance, we were driven to the conclusion that after doing some surveys, that the potential future user of an electric vehicles will definitely will like to use and to charge the car at home if he has the opportunity to do it. So this means one thing. This means that what is most natural is that if everybody arrives at home more or less at the same time, they will plug the car, and what happens is that we will have a peak in the load, and the total load of the system will be very, very, very large. And this will create problems to the grid, will create problems to the generation system, and this is not what we want. Of course, that in the early stages of the development of this concept, this is not a problem, but if we look for the future, this will be a problem, and therefore we need to start taking care of this issue from the very beginning. So we developed the concept that is now very much used by other researchers, that is the so-called smart charging approach. What is a smart charging approach? Is a way where the charging of the electric vehicle is only made when there is no problems in the network, neither in the generation system, and more important than that, when it is possible to use renewable power sources. And this is what has been done, and most of the research we conducted in the last years was very much oriented towards that subject. So we developed tools, we developed models to be capable to represent the charge of the electric vehicle and their behavior and the way how this would impact the operation of the electric system as a whole. And this means, for instance, looking at what may happen in terms of markets. So how the market would behave in such conditions, how to manage the existing electric power system in such conditions. Is this going to increase or decrease the level of security of the operation of the grid? And of course, we arrived to the conclusion that if we are capable to include in the chargers of the electric vehicles additional functionalities such that they will help the grid, they will be in fact very helpful agents that will not only use this renewable energy and will make more sustainable use of the energy, but they will even provide robustness and resilience to the system. We also tried to look at the problems related with, for instance, the idea of having the concept or developing the concept of vehicle to home, which is something that we now want very much, all of us, because everywhere we are concerned with the resilience of the electric power system. And the resilience of the electric power system, which is something that came out after Fukushima, we understood that, for instance, concepts relate like microgrids, and so they are extremely important, but they need one key element to operate, and this key element is storage. And this storage can be provided by the electric vehicles or, of course, all other types of stationary storage. Now we are also evolving on that matter. But so the electric vehicle is indeed key for the success of the development of all these new ideas. And very important to understand that the electric vehicle is really a new player, but a player with special characteristics, is that in order to accommodate large amounts of renewable energies in the system, we need to tackle with a new concept, which is flexibility. And flexibility is something where the electric vehicles are capable to, they can provide. I mean, they can charge a little bit later, or they can increase even a little bit the charging. So they are extremely flexible. They are a different load from the conventional ones. And we are nowadays very much concerned with the trying to look at the flexible load, and even to try to evaluate the potential and the value of this flexibility. So in fact, the use of the electric vehicle as a new player in the system may bring very interesting additional benefits to the operation of the grid in the way we want it to be in the future, with a large amount of renewable power sources. And following that idea, so we developed all kind of tools, all kind of studies in Portugal, in the different research institutions. And I may tell you that the conclusions that we arrived at is that we see a bright future for the electric vehicle in a scenario where it may coexist with a large-scale integration of renewable power sources, which is indeed the key for the success of the electric mobility. And of course, that in order to do that, we still need to pass from the simulation and from the theoretical studies to the reality. And for instance, in my institution, and I know that in other places similar things are being done, we are now passing from the software and the models to the pre-prototypes, to the hardware, to the labs, and again with the concern to pass this to the industry. And in Portugal, fortunately, we also have industry that is taking profit from that, like is the case of, for instance, EFACEC. And I do believe that we should continue doing our best effort in R&D on this topic in order to promote value, to create new ideas, and in the way that not only the Portuguese economy, but the European economy and the world economy will become more sustainable, and we may all be more happy in a new world. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. If there are some questions to João Bel on the research and development topic, please feel free to raise your hand and to put your question. Otherwise, you can go to internet and look at the wonderful things they are doing in the laboratories there and all the papers that have been published. But here you have the possibility of asking questions and getting the answers in real time. So if someone wishes to put some questions. Otherwise, we move to the next speaker. Thank you, João Bel, once more. And we move to the infrastructure. As you know, Portugal was one of the first countries worldwide to have a large-scale deployment program for charging points. And Reis, who was in charge of that program, will tell us about what has been done and what has been achieved so far.
Good afternoon. My name is Reis, as Jorge mentioned. I work with SEIA, and I've been involved, along with a consortium of companies, in the creation of a solution for national-wide interoperable environment for charging EVs for a few years now. I'd like to thank the organization and give my congratulations to Paulo for the excellent conference that he has put up. And when addressing this issue of infrastructure, I wanted to first talk a bit about the concept that we have of what is an infrastructure, then look a bit at what has been the Portuguese experience, have a critical analysis, a bit of a critical analysis, and give you some data on what's been happening so far, and try to identify some trends that might help us understand what's going to happen next, not only in Portugal but in the world, regarding the growth of infrastructure and the contribution that infrastructure gives to the development of electric mobility. I will mainly address the issue of common vehicles, but I would like to emphasize the fact that we at APVE, we try to take into account all modes of transportation, from private vehicle to two wheels to public transportation. It is in our mission to provide better and more sustainable solutions throughout all the modes of transportation. But today, we are addressing the issue of infrastructure for vehicles. I would say that in terms of looking a bit at the market, we have and from the experience that we have gathered around the world, we may have passed the point of no return in the introduction of EVs. I've passed a couple of weeks ago. I spent 2 weeks in California, and there it's a very particular market. Actually, there are a few particular markets in terms of EV introduction: California, the Netherlands, Norway. But you can actually feel the dynamics around this market, and how this market, with the push that manufacturers are now bringing and now coming into action, the fact that this will be an actual dynamic market in years to come. We have now more than 50,000 charging stations all over the world, and as you know, there are ambitious plans not only in the major economic blocks, not only in the US, but in particular in Europe, where, and I have some details on that, where the European Commission has put as a target to have a very comprehensive infrastructure by 2020 that enables, that fosters the growth, the continuous growth of the electric vehicle market. So, but when we address the issue of infrastructure, we tend to think about technology, about the charging station, but this technology, these charging stations come from within an EV ecosystem where different players come into action. First of all, we have seen, after a very strong effort from some manufacturers like Nissan and Renault a few years back, we now see a more coherent effort from different manufacturers, and in fact they are trying to push forward, to move forward in this market, and they are trying to test even with EVs, and we have heard about some of the new challenges that EVs raise in the connection with the grid and etc. They are trying to push for new models for rolling out their products, and why not testing the evolution from products to services. And one of the ways that they're doing that is by, among others, testing car sharing programs where they make EVs visible. The case of Daimler with Car2Go is a very significant one. The case of BMW with Drive Now. Other cases that come from new companies, new emerging companies like Tesla, like Bolloré in France with the car sharing, are very significant examples of the opportunities that lay behind the electric vehicles. But of course, cities are the medium where all this comes together. Cities have put as a major objective to get rid of ICE vehicles by 2050 in Europe. So they're facing this major challenge of shifting transportation to more sustainable sources, to electricity, and take advantage of renewable sources of energy, but at the same time promote the introduction of these new modes of transport, these new modes of energy throughout all the modes of transportation. Mobility service providers are, in fact, trying to enter this business, and we see operators coming to action. We see new companies testing new services, but none of these come to play without interacting with vehicle manufacturers and cities. Of course, utilities play a major role. In a way, electric vehicles are a challenge to the way that utilities have been working in the market. But there are other. Most of the interest that we have seen in getting infrastructure installed comes from players outside all of these that we would think directly interested in electric mobility. And these are, for instance, retail chains. And of course, their business is not to resell electric mobility services. It's to have people spending time in retail stores. And I've come to some statistics where we actually see that EV users spend more time in retail stores in the US than people that drive conventional vehicles. And further than that, they have a different profile, and they spend more money when they are in retail. So the sustainability of infrastructure, the business models behind introducing infrastructure need to take into account all these players, all these dynamics, and of course the users are and need to be at the center of all of this. Nothing works if it doesn't return value to the users, either individuals or fleet operators. So infrastructure growth, electric mobility growth depends on the ability to deliver value, mostly to users, and I would say to cities and communities. And of course, when we talk about infrastructure, there's an array and a growing array of solutions that we come across. In Portugal, the infrastructure that has been laid focuses mainly on normal charging and quick charging, DC 50 kilowatt CHAdeMO. But there is a growing array of solutions for charging vehicles, and the market, of course, will foster or will decide by itself on how this mix will grow. I would say that if we talk about home charging, we would go for whatever we have available at home. So we would go for something like normal charging at home. If you are operating a fleet in the office, you would go for something like, like an slow to intermediate charging. If you are thinking about the wide array that you can find in publicly accessible locations, then you have a range that goes from normal charging up to quick charging and beyond. But of course, when we tend to think of this, we always tend to think, how long does it take to charge my battery? And what we have also come across is that people learn to use infrastructure, and infrastructure becomes a range extender, and somehow enables users to have more confidence on the use of their vehicles and extend their range and to reduce their range anxiety. If you look at what are 30 minutes of charging worth in terms of kilometer, we can see that if we go to the supermarket and charge our car for half an hour, we get an extra 12 kilometers. So it gives us enough power to get back home. Even if you charge for at an intermediate power that you can find in some that you can now find in some locations, you will be able to charge another 70 kilometers. So the way that the mix of charging evolves, this is also dependent on the perception that we are able to transmit to people, and this will make the market grow and adjust supply to the demand. When it comes to Portugal, as George mentioned, we had a top-down approach, started back in 2008, where the government at the time developed a rationale for electric mobility that went beyond just rolling out an infrastructure or an array of charging stations, and went as far as developing some rules for the dynamics of this market that would put together the role of utilities, the role of operators, the role of users, and the role of cities, among others. So Portugal was, in fact, the first place, or the first country in the world with a comprehensive legal and regulatory framework for electric mobility that created an open marketplace, an interoperable marketplace where people can charge their vehicle at different stations operated by different manufacturers, by different operators, and have sort of like an electric mobility roaming, and it was an interesting experience to develop. We have today around 800 users, some 1,200 publicly accessible EV charging stations in about 450 locations. Among these, only 8 are quick chargers, and they're all CHAdeMO quick chargers. So there is the need to upgrade the existing, but also we have the Portugal, with the support from the government, implemented what was called a pilot phase for electric mobility, where there is still a significant number of charging stations to roll out, mainly quick charging stations that of course need to be installed and need to be upgraded for compliance with new vehicles that are now in the market. But nevertheless, there are 4 operators active in the country, and the infrastructure is present in 45 cities around that, also not only in the continent, but also in Madeira. And we can say that so far we've had something like 260 megawatt hours consumed in the network, and we have been keeping track of the emissions that are avoided by the use of electric vehicle, and we have avoided something like 170 tons. The charging is mostly concentrated, as I mentioned, the network is spread all over the country in 45 municipalities, but the charging is mostly concentrated in the main urban areas of Lisbon and Porto. We can see here the heat map, and also I put up the number for Coimbra, where 3% of the consumptions have occurred in Coimbra since 2010. But of course, 100 users represent about, the most active users represent about 90% of the overall consumption, and this 90% 90% of the consumption occurs in around 800 locations of the 400, among the 450 that I mentioned. So it's a well-spread network, but with a lower use than was expected at the time, and with the use that is concentrated mostly in the urban areas of Lisbon and Porto. Nevertheless, this is one interesting thing. We have heard João speaking about the importance of home charging and charging after hours. This is an interesting number where we can see that 23% of the charging, about 1/4 of the charging occurs during the night. So what this happens is that in Portugal, we have a different configuration of cities where many people don't have garages, and in fact, public infrastructure, which is sometimes neglected, is actually acting as a home charging solution or a fleet charging solution for those that take their EVs home in the evening. Nevertheless, the fact that we have a small number of users, I wanted to bring you this picture. This shows where people that are registered as living in Lisbon or working in Lisbon go with their EVs. This is the case of Porto, and this is the case of Coimbra. And in fact, we can see that it's interesting to see that, in fact, the network has somehow contributed for the small number of users to have some mobility around the country and to go from city to city. And in fact, we see that many people living in Lisbon have actually gone as far as almost to northern North Portugal, near Spain, taking advantage of charging along the way. And this is an interesting chart which enables us to figure or to imagine what can happen once the quick chargers that are not yet installed are rolled out. Because some of the insights that we get from EV users is that they are resilient. They are committed. So for us, it seems sometimes it seems not something that we wouldn't do to wait 30 minutes for a car to charge a full battery. But if you are committed as an EV user, perhaps it's something that it's normal for you to do. You take a coffee, you drink not a beer, but a juice or water, and go along the way, and you have zero emissions experience. Another fact that I'd like to bring to you is that, and this is based also on the learning experience that users have. We know that many people commute to work with their EVs, and there's this magic number that 90% of daily trips are less than 50 kilometers. We can actually see from this information that a common charging event is something up to 6 kilowatt hours, which is less than 2 hours of charging, or about 2 hours of charging, which enables you to put something like 20 kilometers in your car. Of course, the quick charge is a bit biased by the absence of CCS2, meaning all the chargers are still CHAdeMO. There is an interesting behavior when there were only Japanese cars in the market compliant with the CCS. We had a significant share of quick charging, and is now very much lower than by then. But this is interesting to see that, in fact, EV users learn how to use their vehicles, and sometimes they do small charges that enable them to keep moving around throughout the day and manage their mobility based on EVs. So this is a bit of a glimpse. What's going to happen next? We don't yet know. We are in a transition phase in Portugal. I have a slide on that. But what we know in terms of trends regarding infrastructure, and I won't go into much detail because we have Pedro from EFACEC that is much more knowledgeable than me in this matter. But we know that infrastructure will keep developing, the models will keep developing, and some trends will reshape infrastructure in years to come. First of all, technology, faster charging. This is an example brought by Tesla, where they have a different business model when they are rolling out their own quick chargers with their own technology and their own protocols, and they're going for something like 120 kilowatt and beyond, a bit further than what we have today available in public networks all around Europe, and generically available in other regions like the US. Wireless charging. Wireless charging will most possibly also reshape the way that we perceive what is charging our cars, our user experience. We see experiences and most interest from different manufacturers. BMW and Daimler are partnering in wireless charging. We see more and more experiences with buses where you have bus routes that enable the buses to charge when they stop at the station, and that enables them to go to the next station. And then battery swapping seems not to be dead yet. After the experience with Better Place, Tesla still has in their hands the possibility to launch battery swapping and enable people to charge in like 3 minutes or something, which is the time to change an empty battery with a replenished battery. Integrating mobility and integrating the different modes, which is something like that Stussi also mentioned, is one of the key challenges is to bring electric mobility to the different modes and integrate the different modes under the user, under the perspective of the user. This is an example of a project that SEIA is working in Brazil, where in the same platform, with the same platform, users can charge their vehicles but also pick up a shared vehicle and along the way go into the bus. And then there's the issue of interoperability. What we have seen so far in Europe is that many networks have been growing. We have had a different approach here in Portugal, where there was a top-down approach at the market that created an interoperability between the different operators. What you're seeing today is a tremendous effort from mostly manufacturers that want their users to have a seamless experience and to access different networks, is an effort in order to try to put these networks together and in the perspective of the user, meaning enabling users to access charging stations from different companies in a very seamless way, and why not pay for it and access with the phone and pay for it in one single bill. And one of the efforts that is being done is developed around interoperability. Technical interoperability first, enable that all chargers are able to talk with all backend systems and that all backend systems talk to each other, and then business interoperability, ensuring that the same way that we do with cell phones when we go abroad and enter roaming and enter roaming with a different operator, the same thing can be done with electric mobility operators. This is a working group, EMI3, where most of the players, and inclusively some clearinghouses that are emerging in Germany, like Object, or in France, like GREV, are coming together in order to, in a very representative group of companies representing all, I would say, all the most relevant stakeholder groups working on developing these interfaces so that actually all this interoperability can happen. And myself, I'm one of the members of the board of EMI3. And another thing, coming back to the idea put in the table by João, is that actually smart mobility starts at home. People tend to charge their vehicles at home or at the fleet. And in a way, vehicles are contributing, like João mentioned, to somehow question the way that the electric sector has been operating so far, where you and I'm not Luís, I'm a meter that is placed at my home. But when I become Luís driving an EV, I become Luís driving an EV that will charge in different locations throughout the day, in different cities, in different charging stations by different operators, and consuming different services. So we can imagine how EVs, apart from the fact that they are a storage device that can connect to or decentralized production of energy, to decentralized management of energy, how this is in a way reshaping the way that the electric sector has been working so far, and is moving from a utility-centric to a user-centric model, where we can see users coming together and acting in a different way vis-à-vis the electric sector, in a different way that we did so far, because we are used to having one bill at the end of the month with one reading. But now with the EV user has a bill with different readings in different locations, so it's a different paradigm. And then there's policy. policy has been very attentive to what's been happening in electric mobility. There was actually, when the economic crisis struck the European and the American economies back in 2008, 2009, there was an effort done both by European Commission and the different states and the US by the Obama administration in rescuing or reshaping the automotive sector. The main driver for future development for recovery of the automotive sector was in fact betting on on green vehicles, green technologies, batteries, etc. And this has somehow been on the policy agenda since then, and not only on the side of the industry, but also on the side of the infrastructure, has been somehow contributing to the growth that we have been having so far. But of course, we need to anticipate a day where all the businesses related with the infrastructure become sustainable, and there is a phasing out of public policy. But nevertheless, we have had a strong effort from the Portuguese government. The Portuguese government just revised the law with a new law decree, Decreto-Lei 90/2014, where some of the foundations of this market are set, and some new ideas are put in order, like the possibility to choose electricity from a different electricity supplier, the ability to, the need to have buildings prepared for future installation of infrastructure, etc. And we can see how this copes with what are the main drivers in the European Directive on Alternative Fuels that has set the main targets and the main drivers for electric vehicle infrastructure, among other alternative fuels infrastructure in Europe by 2020, establishing a target of 800,000 charging stations, charging points on European streets or in European publicly accessible locations by 2020, and fostering the integration between EV charging and other modes of transportation, the intelligent integration with the grid, the competitiveness and openness of the market, and the ability of users to choose who they are buying their electric mobility from. So in essence, some key challenges as a wrap-up and as hints for future developments of infrastructure are the key link between energy and transportation, the fact there is no fit-all models. Different models will emerge from different players. Manufacturers are pushing towards more integrated models. Utilities are pushing towards utility-led models. And all of this will come together with interoperability and flexible, intelligent solutions that somehow connect public infrastructure with home and fleet management and with other services in the city like public transportation and shared transportation. So I don't know if there are any questions. Thank you for your patience.
And we move to our last presentation in this session, or this first part of the session. And our speaker is Pedro Silva from EFACEC. The company has already been mentioned as one of the leading producers of equipment for this new industry of electric mobility. And EFACEC was one of the main providers for the infrastructure project that was described previously. So this all fits together.
Good afternoon. My name is Pedro Silva, as Jorge presented, and I will present today to you a view of a company like us that has a different view on electric mobility, that is the view of the business side. And to show to you an example, well, my example, the only example I can speak about, of how electric mobility can turn into a business opportunity for companies. And in our case, a company devoted to electrical infrastructure. That's basically what we do. We don't build cars, we don't build batteries, we don't build motors. So what we do is what I will show to you. This is the summary of what I will speak about. So the episode of how electric mobility became a business for us, some of the main achievements and some of the solutions that we are presenting to the market, and the main areas that we are still working at and which are still challenges for the future and for the evolution of our part of the system. So starting from how we are here, we see at our company innovation as value creation in the context of change, of course. So you need to introduce new things or new products or new activities, but they have to create value, otherwise it's not innovation, it's just pure R&D. As I mentioned, this is one of the cases. I will show you three at the same time. So we have some facts that allowed us to develop this activity as much as we did so far. The first one is a certain anticipation of the market. So we started looking at electric mobility a little before it really started to be a reality. So we were conducting studies and market researches to see if this was a viable sector to go in. We managed our knowledge, as I will show to you, so the competencies that the company has, and I think we were able to achieve the proper time to market, and we have been doing that so far, as I will show to you. So the anticipation, as I mentioned, since 2008 that we were looking at this sector to find out if it was worth to work on this. Of course, we have an important background of know-how, especially in electronics and software, and for this particular case, the power electronics played an important role. A very good opportunity was the project that Luís mentioned before, the pilot project for the MOBI.E program in Portugal, of which we were one of the members of the consortium that developed the pilot infrastructure. Okay, I will pass briefly the way that we made since 2009 up to here. In 2009, the MOBI.E pilot project started. You see the consortium members below, where EFACEC is one of the members. We were in charge of the infrastructure, so that's already in the way that we wanted to go in the future. In 2010, the rollout of the MOBI.E pilot network started. At the same time, we were already the first company outside of Japan to have a quick charger compatible with the Japanese standard. That standard was formalized in the same year, in 2010, and an association was created with the name CHAdeMO, that is now very well known because it's the name of the standard that is adopted by some car manufacturers. And we are founding members of CHAdeMO, and we were the first company in the world outside of Japan to have compatible chargers. That allowed us to bring to Portugal the European presentation of the Nissan Leaf, as you probably remember, in the end of 2010. So it was also a very good showcase of the MOBI.E project, because we were showing that we were doing things faster than many other countries. In the same year, we opened the first gasoline station in Europe equipped with a fast charger, which is in Oeiras, in Galp, that you probably know. In 2011, we started to explore some international markets for this activity. The first projects we did were already in 2011. You see some examples there: Turkey, USA, England, the United Arab Emirates. We again supported the launch of new cars, like probably remember the Renault Kangoo and Fluence were launched also in Portugal. Again, supported by infrastructure that we put in place and connected to the MOBI.E network. So the journalists that were coming to test the cars could see in their map the MOBI.E stations and know where they are and use them. And we started to participate in 2011, so you see almost from the beginning of this activity in very important events. We were in South Africa at the COP17 climate conference, providing the infrastructure for the cars that were used in the conference. In 2012, we developed a project with Caetano Bus, a Portuguese bus manufacturer. At the time was one of the first electrical buses of this size to be put in the market. And at the same time, we succeeded in having our AC charger certified by this program of Renault, this ZED Ready program. And again, Portugal, once again, was chosen for the launch of the Renault Zoe, as you probably also remember. So all this activity was helping to bring the car manufacturers to Portugal to use the infrastructure, use the equipment that were among the most advanced in Europe that you could find. In 2013, we again anticipated the market. We were the first company in the world to have the CCS charger certified by the car manufacturers. And we introduced the concept, and during almost 1 year, we were the only manufacturer in the world delivering chargers with the dual standard. The SHAdeMO that I mentioned before, and the CCS standard that was a new standard that in these 2 years was developed by the German and the American car manufacturers. We were not only one of the first companies to have the CCS approved, but we were the only company in the world delivering dual standard chargers. And we were, in fact, the company that introduced this concept at the EVS in Los Angeles in 2012. Which, by the way, at the time, many people were saying that it was impossible because the chargers were so different that you could not build a charger for both standards. Okay, the concept is there, and now all our competitors have this, so proves that it can be done. And in 2014, at the moment where we are, we have a full range of chargers that cover all the applications that Luis mentioned before. I will pass that very briefly, so I'm not here to make publicity to the products, but just to show you how Portugal and Portuguese companies can look at electric mobility at a perspective of having products, having solutions, go for the market without any fear, and now have a good position in the market, which I believe we have. Okay, some of the main differentiating solutions. This I will pass you very fast. So a full range of chargers, from small home chargers, very simple, or sophisticated. It depends on what the application is, to have in your home, in your garage, up to the fast chargers that you can use in public places or private, if it's a fleet, to charge your car faster. So you have all the range from 50 kilowatt down to 3.7 or 2.2. On fast charging, just a reminder for people who maybe not be so technical. Probably for the technical people, this is very, very simple things, but for people that are non-technical, just to understand, there's a basic difference between AC charging and DC charging. And that is why you have many competitors doing AC charging and not so many competitors doing DC charging. Practically all the cars, all the old cars that have a socket to plug a wire have an onboard converter from AC to DC, because the battery is, of course, a DC device. This converter has to be fed by an equipment, and this equipment is not really converting AC to DC. This equipment is more or less controlling the flow of energy and management, authentication, communications, all that you want. But in terms of electric power, this equipment is just controlling the flow of energy. So it's not really converting energy. So it's an equipment that is not very expensive, but there's a limitation on this. Is the equipment that is on board charging the battery is, of course, cannot have a lot of power, because the more power you put in this converter, the more size, the more weight, the more cost you have inside of your car. So it's not a solution if you want to charge your car faster and you need more power for that. And for that reason, the solution, of course, is to have the converter outside of the car. So that's why when you want to charge faster, you need more power, you need a converter outside of the car. And this converter will charge the battery directly with DC power. So this is the basic difference between AC and DC charge, and that makes that DC is mainly used, as you see in this picture, for higher power. So see the orange shadow. And when you start with low power, you tend to use AC because it's available, it's easy to find and easy to install. But the faster you want to charge, the more power you need, and of course you go to DC. Except one car manufacturer that is a little bit different from the others, but most, I would say 90-something% of the car manufacturers use this approach. Other examples of sophistication on this is that we can combine fast charging and slow charging, of course, but on fast charging the effect is much more important. You can combine this with local storage, for example. This is just an example and it's not exhaustive. There are many ways of doing combination of charging infrastructure with local energy storage. So this is just one example. And in this example, what you can see is a local storage that allows to charge more cars than the power that is contracted from the grid, because you use some energy that you stored before. And there's also an important advantage when you combine charging with storage, is that you can use the storage capacity to do other things, to interact with the grid, for example, even when you are not charging cars. So it's just there, a battery, you can use the battery to interact with the grid, which is of course very important, and also allows things like smart charging, and because you decouple when you ask power from the grid to when you actually give it to the car. We also have an open system approach. This slide is just an example both ways. On the left you can see our platform that is managing chargers, and we can manage chargers of any manufacturer. So we don't, contrary to some of our competitors that have their chargers and their own management system or their own cloud and the chargers are connected there, we believe that the market wants open systems. So our platform can manage chargers from other manufacturers. And the opposite, like you see on the right, which is the MOBI.E platform, for example, that can have our chargers and chargers also from other manufacturers. So we believe completely in open systems. And actually, we have been working with the OCPP, which is an organization that, it's not really an organization because it's informal, that is developing open standards for everybody to use between the chargers and the management systems. Just one slide about this multi-standard approach. So we took what we have from a Shademo charger, and by adding some extra hardware and extra software, we were able to do a multi-standard charger, so proving that it is possible. The chargers are really very different, the standards are really very different, but you can use blocks from different, from one charger, from one standard and use it on the other standard. So you don't need really to build a new charger, to build a multi-standard charger. This slide shows it from the business perspective. So a combo standard or a CCS standard charger costs roughly the same as a Shademo charger. So in terms of investment for the infrastructure owner, it's the same, more or less. Of course, with the Shademo, you get a certain revenue by charging some car manufacturers, some cars. With the combo, you get another revenue by charging other brands that you see on the right. But of course, if you use a charger with both, the increment in cost is not that many, and you can capture both the revenues with not having twice the cost of the investment. So this is our triple charger, because as I mentioned, we have two standards and we have AC for some cars that use AC. And this is, I would say, our star in our range. And we have around 500 of these units. Well, last September we had around more than 500 of these units installed all over the world. Very, very fast, some other differentiating solutions that we present, like the master-slave solution that you know probably from the MOBI.E network, and combination of different chargers in networks. So I'll pass this faster. And finally, what is next? What is coming next? This is the market in fast chargers that, as I described before. So in the United States, you have combo and you have Shademo. So you have the two plugs, because you have cars running on Shademo and cars running on combo, with a plug that is the American plug. In Europe, you have the same. You have cars running on Shademo, you have cars running on combo, but in Europe the combo plug is different because it accepts three-phase, contrary to the United States. In China, you have its own standard for AC and its own standard for DC. And in Japan, you have similar situation to United States, but you don't have combo. You only have AC and you have Shademo. And you have all the cars that run in one of these standards. And we are delivering solutions for these markets. Just a fast slide. I'm not asking you to read the names of our clients, because this is just an example and it's growing every day, luckily. But you see on the top, most of the electric cars that are in the market today, and more are coming every day. And we work very well with most of them. And on the right, you see that to address this big market worldwide, we created a network of partners that are working with us to address this market. Some of them have exclusive countries, others are worldwide partners. And you see the names that we have as partners, which are always very strong names in the country or in the markets where they operate. And I think this is also recognition of our work so far. To give you a rough idea, in September we had around 3,000 chargers installed all over the world, most of them in Europe and the United States. What you see there, Asia, it's not really Asia, it's Turkey and Middle East, so it's not really far Asia, but the map put Turkey in Asia. Turkey is a very good market for us. So we have basically Europe and the United States. Latin America is mainly Brazil, and Africa is mainly South Africa.
But in the States, where are they?
All over. All over. From Hawaii to Minnesota to Chicago to California, East Coast, Colorado, Georgia, Kansas.
In Latin America?
Latin America, Brazil.
Brazil, okay.
But these numbers are already old because the market is doing like this. So every time a month passes, the numbers increase more than they did before, which is unfortunately not the situation of Portugal, which is zero, practically zero. But you see that our focus is mainly Europe and the United States. And I think this also shows that a Portuguese company, if has the will to go and to address these markets, can have success in the United States, in Germany, England, Scandinavia, or whatever. Of those, as I mentioned, more than 500 in September are quick chargers, which makes us probably one of the companies that has installed more quick chargers in the world so far. Again, to show that we try to be a little ahead of the market always, last week we presented a new concept that did not exist, and we presented at the CarTech exhibition in Munich. It's a semi-fast charger, wall mount, very light equipment that you can install on the wall, so you don't need big civil works or expensive installation, which is targeted for semi-public or private applications, for fleets, for shopping centers, for car dealers, for shops, for whatever you want to use. And we found out that there is a gap, as Luis showed very well, between slow charge and fast charge. There are all the flavors in between. And the 24 kilowatt charger is very, very good for places where you will be half an hour or 1 hour, like this conference. If you would come with electric car, you want your car completely full when you go out. You cannot do that with a slow charger. But you also don't need a fast charger because you'll stay here more than 20 minutes. So a semi-fast charger is the ideal solution for many, many, many applications. And we are seeing a lot of interest in these power ranges. Now, just to finalize, what's next? Of course, this is still an industry that is in the beginning, the way we see it. The first generation of cars is being launched. Some car manufacturers only came to the market this year. Others are still a little behind. Others are in the market for now 4 years, but it's still a sector that is in the beginning. So a lot of evolution, a lot of changes will come. And so we are conducting programs with partners, some national, some international, on many of those topics which are important for us as infrastructure providers. You have smart charging, like João Peças Lopes and Luis Reis described, which is manage when and how and at which rates you are going to charge. Demand management, that is the reaction of the charging to the conditions that you have in your home or that you have in your area or that you have in the total grid. Solutions for fleets, condominiums, we feel there are important things to do in this aspect, which is a little bit different from the public networks. If you have a fleet of cars and you have your own chargers and you want to manage that, you need adequate solutions for that, not only in terms of hardware, but also in terms of software and how you manage that and how you explore this, which is completely different from public infrastructures. For example, in a condominium, you want to allocate the cost of the electricity to each car owner. It's as simple as that. You don't need that all this is connected to a big operator that will charge you for a service, something you can manage locally. V2X, it has been spoken here. V2X is what is vehicle to grid, vehicle to home, vehicle to load, is ways of getting energy that is stored in the vehicle and use it for other purposes, as some of them have been already described here. Communications between car and the charger, there's a lot of things that you can do based in this communication, and not only identification and charge management. There's a lot of things you can do once this communication is in place, and we know that some car manufacturers are already preparing to have cars in the market in 2017 that are able to communicate with infrastructure on top of the energy connection. New charger models, I just show you an example. I'm truly convinced that the chargers we will be selling in 5 years are not the same that we are selling today. Of course, things will evolve. Lower and higher power. Higher power because I believe that more and more power will be necessary to charge batteries faster or to charge bigger batteries. And we work a lot with car manufacturers on this aspect. Lower power because of the things we mentioned to you. Wireless charging, a very important area that we also are working on. Payment systems and so on. So I will not read all of them to you, but this industry is still in the beginning. There's a lot of things to be done. I will not speak a lot about this to you because, of course, we are a company, so we have some secrecy in what we are doing. But just to give you an idea, there are a lot of areas to work on for an industry like us. And that's it.
Thank you very much, Pedro. Any questions about the charging machines? If not, may I invite you first to join me in thanking all the speakers.